The Galactic Council had watched humanity for centuries from afar as they progressed from primitive tools to spacefaring pioneers. They observed the rapid growth of technology, the rise of towering cities, the advancement of medicine, and art, the fierce resolve that drove humans to explore the vast unknown and to push the limits of their world. But even so, the Council's interest remained cautious. They were a vast and ancient network of species, bound by an intricate web of politics and peace agreements. Many believed humanity's time had not yet come. And so they waited, yet the humans did not sit idle. They reached out to the stars, first as explorers, and then as conquerors of knowledge, eager to understand the universe and challenge its mysteries. Finally, the time came when the Council decided it was ready to make contact, but they were not prepared for what would follow. An invitation was sent to Earth. A single ship arrived at the planet's orbit, a sleek and imposing vessel that shone in the light of distant stars. Its presence felt like an immense weight. Against the heavens its doors opened, and the Council's representative stepped forward, an alien figure, tall and graceful with eyes that shimmered like stardust. They spoke in soothing tones, promising peace and collaboration, offering a place at the table of the stars. The message was clear: humanity was invited to join the greater galactic community, a place where peace reigned and prosperity flourished across hundreds of worlds, a chance to stand among the galaxy's greatest civilizations, to learn from their wisdom, to share in their technologies, to prosper in a galaxy that had long been governed by the Council's careful diplomacy. News of the invitation spread like wildfire across Earth, from the governments of every nation to the humblest individuals. People marveled at the prospect of joining this incredible galactic society. Everyone could feel the weight of the moment, for humans had always looked to the stars with longing, but now it seemed the stars themselves were extending a hand, a chance to become something greater than they had ever imagined. The leaders of Earth convened hastily. They debated the offer with cautious enthusiasm. They acknowledged the potential for unimaginable progress, access to alien technologies, vast knowledge, a guarantee of peace and safety. But in the midst of all the excitement, a few voices spoke out, warning against blindly trusting these alien powers. History was full of stories where peaceful faces hid darker motives. Had they earned the right to stand shoulder to shoulder with those who had mastered the stars? Despite the reservations, humanity was eager to take the next step. As representatives from Earth made their way to the Galactic Council's space station in orbit, they gazed at the stars ahead of them with wonder mixed with the cold uncertainty of what awaited them. The first humans to meet the galaxy's greatest minds, the first to shake hands with species that had lived for millennia. But even as the humans approached the massive station, with its shimmering spires and vast, gleaming halls, there was a quiet sense of unease growing deep within their hearts, a feeling that perhaps something more than just the chance for peace awaited them, something not yet understood, something larger than diplomacy itself. They were about to take their place among the stars, but they knew in their hearts that the galaxy might not be ready for them yet. The humans arrived in a vast and breathtaking hall, a structure unlike anything they had ever seen on Earth. It was made of strange alloys and shimmering materials that seemed to hum with energy, the walls alive with intricate patterns and symbols that none of the humans could understand. The air was thick with a quiet hum of power as they walked through the long corridors, their footsteps soft but firm against the pristine floors. They were led by their diplomats, the most skilled negotiators humanity could offer. Yet even they couldn't hide the nervousness that ran through them. The enormity of the moment weighed on their minds, for they were stepping into a realm governed by species far older and more powerful than anything Earth had ever encountered. Finally, they'd reached the central chamber, a hall that stretched endlessly in all directions, illuminated by a glow that seemed to come from nowhere. As they entered, their eyes widened in awe. The chamber was filled with beings from hundreds of worlds, each one more alien and extraordinary than the next. Some had multiple arms, others had shimmering scales, and some seemed to be composed of light itself. The air was thick with the weight of history, and the humans felt as though they were intruding on something sacred. There were no voices, only a deep collective gaze that regarded them with curiosity, even judgment. The humans stood at the center, feeling small despite their towering ambition, their eyes scanning the council members who watched them closely. The leader of the Galactic Council, a tall being whose appearance was both regal and otherworldly, stepped forward. Its voice was like music, soothing and powerful, reverberating through the chamber. It spoke of peace, of unity, of the promise of an endless future among the stars. It spoke of the achievements of the Council, of the centuries of cooperation that had shaped the galaxy into a harmonious whole. There was no mention of war or conquest, only the collective good, the protection of the weak, and the unification of diverse worlds under a shared understanding. For the first time, the humans felt as though they were facing something far larger than they had imagined, something they could either join or be crushed beneath. After the speech ended, a pause followed. Then the human representative, a tall man with sharp features and a steady gaze, stepped forward. His heart raced, but he kept his composure, knowing the importance of this moment. He was no diplomat, but he carried the weight of his species' future on his shoulders. "We thank you for your invitation," he began, his voice steady but carrying an unmistakable edge. "But we must be clear from the outset. We do not seek to simply join your ranks or bend to your ideals." The council representatives exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. A murmur rippled through the room. The human continued, "We come as equals. We come with our own vision for the future, a vision that does not involve surrendering our freedom for the sake of convenience. We offer friendship, but not submission." The alien leader's expression shifted, ever so slightly. There was no anger in its gaze, only curiosity, but the message had been heard. The council's grand expectations began to falter, the once perfect unity of their speech beginning to crack. They had not anticipated this answer, not from a species so new to the stars. The room grew silent again, but this time it was a silence filled with uncertainty. The humans, standing tall and unwavering, met the gaze of the council without fear. The weight of their decision began to settle into the room, and the council leaders knew that the dynamic of the galaxy was about to change. The humans had rejected the path of diplomacy they had set out for them, and no one could predict what would happen next. The Galactic Council was caught in a rare moment of uncertainty. For eons, their methods had been flawless. Diplomacy, carefully constructed agreements, the careful orchestration of peace, all had served to maintain the balance of power. Yet here stood a species unlike any they had ever encountered, a species that not only rejected their grand overtures, but did so with such conviction that it sent ripples through the most powerful minds in the galaxy. Behind the massive walls of the council's chambers, in a space where the members met privately, an urgent conversation took place. The council's oldest members, representatives of the ancient civilizations who had governed the galaxy for millennia, sat together at the grand table. Their faces were still, their eyes distant as they pondered the implications of humanity's response. "I never thought we would see this day," said one of the elder diplomats, his voice raspy, yet full of authority. "A species so young and already so bold. They've rejected the very foundation of our collective peace." Another elder, an alien with translucent skin and a mind that could compute vast equations in a heartbeat, spoke in a measured tone. "They are not merely rejecting our offers. They are rejecting our way of life. The idea of submitting to the collective agreement of peace. They find it unnecessary." A third, a being made of living energy whose body flickered with arcs of light, turned toward the others. "Perhaps they do not value peace in the way we do, or perhaps their understanding of peace is entirely different. We have seen no signs of aggression, but their refusal is unequivocal. We must understand why." A quiet hum of conversation filled the chamber as each council member reflected. It was true. The humans had not shown aggression, nor had they made threats. They had simply stated their intent to remain independent, to govern themselves as they saw fit. But such a stance was a radical deviation from the galactic norm. In the eyes of the Council, their society was built on the idea that cooperation was paramount, that the best way to ensure the survival of all was through unity. And yet this human species, so new to the galactic stage, dared to reject that very idea. Among the younger members of the Council, those from newly formed alliances, the reactions were more extreme. They looked to the future with anxious eyes, worried that this could fracture the peace they had worked so hard to build. What if they are a threat? One of the young delegates asked, a member of a species whose homeworld had been a battlefield in its early history. What if they're just hiding their true nature behind their bold words? But the older delegates remained calm, even intrigued. They had seen species like this before, species that, at first, seemed wild and untamed, yet over time, grew into powerful allies. They recalled the early days of their own civilizations, the centuries of trial and error, the mistakes, and the learning. Perhaps humanity was merely at the beginning of a journey that would take them far beyond the reach of the Council's influence. I believe we are looking at this through the wrong lens, said the elder diplomat with the raspy voice. We are too focused on what they are rejecting, and not enough on what they are offering. A species that values its independence so fiercely does not do so out of ignorance, but out of deep conviction. Another member, a being whose form shifted like water, nodded. They have something to teach us. Perhaps it is not about bending them to our way of thinking, but about understanding what drives them. This could be a turning point, not just for humanity, but for the galaxy as a whole. The conversation shifted from fear to fascination, from suspicion to curiosity. The Council had always prided itself on its ability to predict the behaviors of others, to shape the future with diplomacy and subtlety. But now, with humanity's defiance ringing in their minds, they realized that the future was not as predictable as they had once believed. This human species, for all their rawness and unrefined ways, had just introduced an entirely new element into the galaxy, a wild card that could either change the course of history or disrupt everything they had worked for. One thing was clear: humanity's rejection was not the end. It was only the beginning, and the Council would have to decide if they were willing to accept this new reality or resist it at all costs. The atmosphere in the Galactic Council's chamber had shifted from shock to unease, and now it was tinged with suspicion. The human refusal to bend to their terms, their unwillingness to fall in line with centuries of established peace, had left an indelible mark on the minds of the galaxy's greatest minds. Still, the Council was not without its strengths. It had survived the collapse of empires, the rise and fall of countless civilizations, and the deep divides between its members. Its foundation was one of compromise, of understanding that different species, no matter how vast their differences, could find common ground. But the humans, unlike anything the galaxy had seen before, refused to submit to the idea of common ground. Their leader's words echoed in the minds of the delegates. We come as equals. We will not submit. The leader of the Council, a being of immense intellect and power, stood once more before the assembly. Its towering form seemed to absorb the very light around it as it spoke with calm authority. Humanity has rejected our offers of alliance, peace, and understanding, it said, its voice soft yet carrying the weight of centuries. But rejection alone is not enough. If they refuse to accept the terms of diplomacy, they must prove they can stand without the protection of our unity. The air crackled with tension as the room fell into an expectant silence. The Council had faced challenges before, and it had the means to test the mettle of any species that dared question its authority. But in this case, it was not a matter of outright war, nor was it a matter of retaliation. What the Council sought now was to understand the humans, to see if they truly were as independent and formidable as they had shown. We will test them, the Council leader continued, not through battle, but through trial. Let them prove they have the strength to survive without the structure of our peace. The proposition was bold and unexpected. In a galaxy that had grown comfortable with the notion of collective peace, where conflicts were settled by negotiation rather than force, the idea of a species being tested for their strength outside of established rules was a new, unsettling concept. The challenge was simple in its nature, yet deeply profound. The humans would be given a series of trials, tasks designed to test not only their physical and technological prowess, but their resilience, their ability to adapt, and most importantly, their understanding of the galaxy beyond their homeworld. These trials would be conducted in the uncharted regions of space, areas far from the influence of the Council. The humans would be free to choose how they approached the challenges, but the Council would be watching, silently observing their every move. For the humans, the proposition was both unexpected and strangely invigorating. Instead of bowing to the Council's established order, they would now have the opportunity to define their own future. If they could survive these trials, it would prove they were not just a young species with potential, but a force capable of standing on its own. Their leader, standing tall before the Council's representatives, did not hesitate. "We accept your challenge," he said, his voice firm and clear. "We will prove to you that we do not need your protection, nor your approval. We will show you that humanity can stand alone, and that we will chart our own course, no matter the cost." The Council members exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. They had expected resistance, but not this unwavering confidence. The trial would not be easy. The uncharted regions of space were filled with dangers that even the oldest of civilizations feared, but the humans had already shown themselves to be unpredictable, resourceful, and relentless. It was unclear whether they would succeed or fail, but one thing was certain: the outcome of this trial would change everything. As the humans prepared to embark on their journey, the Council watched silently. They had given the humans a test, a challenge that would either prove their worth or break them. And in that moment, the future of the galaxy hung in the balance, resting on the shoulders of a single species who refused to be bound by the past. As the humans embarked on their trial, the Council's eyes followed them from every corner of the galaxy. The uncharted regions into which they had been sent were perilous, a vast stretch of space that even the most seasoned explorers hesitated to navigate. Ancient phenomena, unknown dangers, and anomalies that defied the laws of physics all lay hidden within this dark expanse. The humans, though, had accepted the challenge with an audacity that both impressed and unnerved the Council. The first few days were quiet. The human fleet moved in tight formation, their ships sleek and responsive as they navigated through dangerous asteroid fields and strange gravitational anomalies. The Council watched with bated breath, expecting the humans to falter, to struggle under the weight of their ambition. But to their surprise, the humans adapted quickly. Their technology, while new by galactic standards, was far more advanced than anyone had anticipated. Their ships had the capacity to maneuver with incredible precision, and their crews worked together with a synchronization that defied the distance between their homeworld and the stars they now explored. But it was not just their technology that caught the attention of the Council. It was their resourcefulness, their ability to think outside the box in ways that had never been seen before. In one of the first tests, a region of space where time itself seemed to bend and warp, the humans used their scientific ingenuity to adapt their ship systems to the strange conditions. While other species would have relied on established methods, the humans employed a mix of creative problem-solving and a willingness to take risks. They emerged from the anomaly with their ships intact, undeterred by the mystery that would have crippled many others. The Council, though impressed, grew increasingly uncomfortable. They had expected the humans to falter, to show weakness in the face of danger. But instead, they displayed a remarkable level of resilience and innovation. Each obstacle that appeared, be it a deadly nebula or a rogue planet hurtling through space, was met with ingenuity and grit. The humans did not follow the same paths of diplomacy and submission that the galaxy's long-standing civilizations had mastered. Instead, they carved their own way through the unknown, as if the very concept of being bound to the rules of the galaxy's order was a limitation they were determined to overcome. As the trials continued, the tension within the Council grew. The younger races, once eager to see humanity's failure, began to question their own assumptions. These species, who had been the first to demand humanity's submission, now found themselves in awe of the human strength. The older, more established civilizations, while still wary of the humans' defiance, could not ignore the undeniable truth. The humans had the capacity to survive, to thrive, and perhaps even to lead. A council member from a peaceful and long-established race, a species that had never known war and had lived in harmony for millennia, spoke with growing concern. What are we witnessing? This is not merely a species surviving the challenges we've set before them. They are redefining the very concept of survival. They are not bound by the same laws we have all accepted. Another, a representative of a warrior race that had once thrived through conquest and dominance, spoke next. I have never seen anything like it. These humans, they do not bend to pressure. They do not seek the protection of our alliances. They carve their own path, and they do so without hesitation. The murmurs among the council grew louder. Their world, built on the principles of unity and shared strength, was beginning to feel more fragile. The humans' actions had set off a ripple effect, not just among the council members, but across the galaxy itself. Some began to question whether the old ways of diplomacy and unity were truly the only path to prosperity. Some began to see the humans as a symbol of something greater, a potential for a new order, one that was not confined by the rigid structures of the council's power. The challenge had begun as a test, but now it was something more. It was a declaration. Humanity had not only survived the trials, they were shaping their own destiny. The tension in the council chamber had reached a breaking point. The realization was dawning on them. The humans were not only a force to be reckoned with, they were forcing the galaxy to confront the possibility that the future may no longer be governed by the old order. And in that moment, the council understood something crucial. This was not about testing humanity's strength. It was about whether the galaxy itself could survive the emergence of a species that would not be swayed by the past. The rising tension was no longer just about the human success or failure. It was about the future of the galaxy and whether it would bend to the will of a single species that refused to be contained. As the trials progressed, it became clear to the council that the humans were not merely surviving. They were thriving. What had initially been a challenge designed to expose their weaknesses had turned into a testament to their resilience, adaptability, and brilliance. The humans had shown a remarkable ability to think beyond the limitations that the Council's long-established species had accepted as immutable laws of nature. Each obstacle, each perilous encounter, had been met with a mix of daring ingenuity and cold, methodical problem-solving. The galaxy's greatest minds were now confronted with an uncomfortable truth. Humanity was not just a fledgling species, they were a force that could not easily be ignored. In a region of space known for its violent storms of plasma and magnetic disruption, the humans had maneuvered through the chaos using a combination of precision and boldness that even the most experienced pilots had never dared attempt. In another instance, when a massive celestial body threatened to destroy an entire fleet, the humans found a way to redirect its path using nothing more than an advanced gravitational field generator. The trial was meant to test the humans' limits, but instead, they were proving that their limits were far beyond what anyone had expected. Yet, despite the humans' astonishing success, the Council remained divided. Some of the older races, those whose wisdom was forged through centuries of cautious diplomacy, were beginning to question the very nature of their peace. They saw in humanity's audacity not only a challenge to their authority, but also a glimmer of something they had long feared: change. It was unsettling to witness a species so young, so unrefined by the codes of galactic order, rise to such prominence. The very idea that humanity could hold its own against the galaxy's mightiest forces, without seeking permission or following the prescribed paths, shook the foundations of the Council's unity. A meeting was called, and the tension in the chamber was palpable. Representatives from every corner of the galaxy gathered, their eyes focused on the central podium where the human leader stood tall, unflinching. He had been invited to speak, but not as a guest. No longer were they simply considering his words as a simple rejection of diplomacy. The human presence now felt like something more significant, more pressing. It was a disruption to the peaceful order that had held the galaxy together for eons. The leader's voice echoed across the vast chamber. "You have watched us. You have tested us. And now we stand before you. I know that many of you expected us to fail, to bend to the ways of your galaxy, but we have chosen another path. We did not come here seeking to be ruled or guided. We came here to prove that we are capable of shaping our own destiny." The response from the council was not what he had expected. Instead of the expected anger or condemnation, the alien representatives sat in stunned silence, each processing the implications of the human statement. The younger, more adventurous races that had once sought humanity's defeat were now starting to ask themselves if they, too, had been wrong to follow the Council's established order. Could it be that the humans had uncovered something deeper, something the galaxy had lost in its endless pursuit of peace? The human leader paused for a moment, letting the weight of his words settle. "We have shown you that we can survive and thrive on our own. But now we offer you something different. We offer knowledge. We offer you the chance to see the galaxy through our eyes. We are not here to join your network as subordinates. We are here to forge a new way forward, a way where freedom is the foundation, where every species has the right to decide its own path, its own future." The council sat in stunned silence. This was not the submission they had anticipated. Instead, humanity was offering something that no one had expected. A radical, daring vision that challenged the very fabric of galactic order. The humans were not asking for peace. They were demanding something more powerful, more transformative. They were offering a future that was not about submission to a higher authority, but about the liberation of every species to chart their own course. For the first time in centuries, the Council's leaders realized that the galaxy was no longer a place where all paths converged on the same ideal. The future was no longer a given, a carefully written script that followed the steady progress of established alliances and peaceful coexistence. The galaxy was shifting, and humanity had sparked that change. The question now was whether the Council would stand firm in its old ways or allow the future to unfold in a new and unpredictable direction. The human leaders' words echoed in their minds long after the meeting ended. They had given their challenge, and the galaxy was forced to reckon with the unthinkable, a future where humanity was not just a player in the cosmic game, but a force that would change the very rules of that game forever. As the Council members wrestled with humanity's audacious proposal, the very foundation of the galaxy's political order began to tremble. The older, more cautious races, the ones who had long maintained the peace, argued among themselves. Many saw humanity's refusal to submit as a threat to the established harmony, a potential spark that could ignite chaos in a galaxy that had known peace for millennia. Others, particularly the younger and more idealistic races, were starting to feel a deep shift in their worldview. They had grown tired of the old ways, tired of living under the rules of the system that had never truly considered their voices. Humanity had shown them that there was more than one way to exist in the galaxy. The diplomatic halls of the Council became divided, the debate becoming more heated by the day. Some factions called for immediate action to quell humanity's rise, to remind them of the unspoken power of the established order. Others, however, started to see the potential for something greater. The possibility of a galaxy where freedom was truly universal, where every species could govern itself as it saw fit, was a tantalizing idea. A quiet, subversive movement began to stir, a movement that questioned the need for a unified, controlling peace. In the meantime, the humans pressed forward with their trials. Every day they faced new challenges, each one more complex and dangerous than the last. Yet, instead of faltering, they grew stronger. They had discovered strange new technologies hidden in the uncharted regions, ancient artifacts left behind by lost civilizations. These discoveries were far beyond anything the Council had ever seen, and the humans were using them to fuel their drive for independence. But more than that, the trials were revealing something about the humans that had begun to unsettle even the most hardened members of the Council. They were not only surviving, they were beginning to excel in ways that seemed impossible. One such discovery occurred when the humans came across an ancient relic, a massive, dormant machine buried deep beneath the surface of a desolate planet. The Council had long known of its existence, but its purpose had never been understood. It was rumored to be a weapon, a relic of a time before the Council's formation. But the humans, with their boldness and their unrestrained approach to exploration, managed to unlock its secrets. Instead of using it as a weapon, they found a way to reverse its function, turning it into a device that could amplify their communications and even alter the fabric of space itself. With this new technology, they were able to establish communications with distant corners of the galaxy, sending messages to species that had once been isolated from the Council's reach. This new development sent shockwaves through the galaxy. The Council, with its tightly controlled network of communications, had always maintained a monopoly on information. But now, humanity had shattered that monopoly. They were able to reach across vast distances, communicating freely with species both inside and outside the Council's influence. It was a move that not only increased their standing in the galaxy, but also put them in direct opposition to the Council's power structure. And as the humans unlocked more and more of the galaxy's hidden secrets, their vision for the future became ever more apparent. A future where every species was free to make its own choices, free to chart its own course without the Council's constant oversight. It was a vision of empowerment, of a galaxy where no one species could dominate the others, where alliances were built on mutual respect rather than forced conformity. The storm of dissent within the Council grew stronger. The younger races who had begun to support humanity's independence now found themselves at odds with the older, more conservative members. A quiet rebellion was taking root, and the cracks in the once unified Council were becoming more visible. Whispers of discontent began to spread, and the question was no longer if humanity would succeed in its independence, but what kind of galaxy would emerge from their challenge. But there were still many who were unwilling to accept the disruption. The most powerful factions in the Council began to make their move. They sought to contain humanity's growing influence, to remind them that their boldness had consequences. It was clear that something would have to give. The calm of the galaxy was over, and the storm that humanity had unleashed could not be undone. The future now rested in the balance. Would humanity's drive for independence reshape the galaxy for the better, or would it fracture the delicate peace that had been built over millennia? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain. The storm was no longer a distant possibility. It was already upon them, and its winds were beginning to howl. The tensions that had been simmering for months erupted into a maelstrom. The Council, once a beacon of unity in the galaxy, was now on the brink of collapse. The question was no longer whether humanity would succeed in its pursuit of independence, but whether the galaxy itself could survive the rift that had formed. The younger species, inspired by humanity's boldness, began to rally behind the human cause, while the older, more powerful factions sought to reassert control. What had begun as a challenge had now become a full-scale ideological war, a struggle between those who sought to preserve the established order and those who believed the future belonged to a galaxy where freedom and independence were paramount. Humanity, undeterred by the political storm raging around them, pressed forward with their vision. The technology they had uncovered during their trials had given them an edge. Their communications network was now vast, extending to every corner of the galaxy, bypassing the Council's stranglehold on information. The message was clear. The age of centralized control was over. In place of the Council's carefully constructed order, humanity offered a new path, a path of cooperation, yes, but one where no species was forced into submission, where every race had the right to govern itself, to forge its own destiny. The first true test of this new vision came when a faction of rebellious species, inspired by humanity's resolve, declared their independence from the Council. They formed an alliance, united by a shared belief in the principles humanity had introduced. The Council, unable to ignore this growing movement, responded swiftly, mobilizing its forces to quell the uprising before it could spread further. But the galaxy's balance of power had already begun to shift. The rebellion, however, was not without its challenges. The Council's older factions, with their military superiority and vast resources, were not easily defeated. The first battles were intense, fought in the cold void of space, with ships clashing in a series of skirmishes that left both sides battered. Yet, despite the overwhelming force of the Council's armies, the rebels fought with a newfound determination. They had learned from the humans, not only in terms of technology and tactics, but also in spirit. They fought not just for survival, but for something greater, their freedom. The turning point came when humanity, with its advanced technology and vast network of allies, delivered a devastating blow to the Council's centralized communications hub. The attack, though precise and calculated, was a clear message. The age of unified control had come to an end. The Council, now fractured and divided, struggled to maintain its grip on the galaxy. The humans, once seen as mere newcomers, had become a galvanizing force for those who had long been suppressed, silenced by the dominance of the older, more powerful races. In the weeks that followed, more species joined the rebellion, some out of ideological conviction, others out of sheer survival. The galaxy was now engulfed in a struggle for control, but this time, it was different. The humans had sparked a movement, one that was not about domination, but about freedom. It was a battle not just for the future of the galaxy, but for the very soul of its civilizations. Would they continue to live under the shadow of a unified hierarchical peace, or would they embrace a new era, one defined by the rights of every species to choose its own path? As the war raged on, the Council's influence continued to wane. Diplomats and leaders from once stalwart factions began to break ranks, defecting to the rebels' cause. The message from humanity had resonated far deeper than any of the Council's members had anticipated. It was a message of hope, of empowerment, that transcended borders and species. And as the final battles approached, one thing became abundantly clear. Humanity's rejection of the Council's order had set in motion a revolution that could not be stopped. The war ended not with a single decisive battle, but with a gradual collapse of the Council's authority. One by one, its members surrendered or fled, abandoning the old ways in favor of a new, uncertain future. The galaxy, once united under the Council's rule, now found itself at the dawn of a new era. An era where no species would be forced into submission, and where the idea of unity would no longer mean conformity. Humanity had not just survived. They had reshaped the galaxy itself. The Council's dream of universal peace had crumbled, replaced by a new dream, a dream of freedom, where every species could chart its own course. And as the dust settled, and the galaxy slowly began to rebuild, humanity stood at the center of it all, not as conquerors, but as the architects of a new age. The storm had passed, but its echoes would be felt for generations to come, as the galaxy moved into a future where the will of one could no longer dictate the fate of all.